Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, of course, I thought that I would give my personal fight predictions of the fights that are going to happen tomorrow. Keep in mind that I'm only really going to give somewhat of an in depth analysis on three of the four fights because, of course, I believe that there is the Abdullah Mason versus Sam Noakes fight, which I think is somewhat of a title fight. I don't know if it's for one of the official titles there, or maybe if it's for an interim or a continental or whatever it may be. Excuse me. But that being said, that was the fight that I really did not research that much. I only took a look at the highlights of both fighters, unfortunately. So I'll be giving the best assessment of that fight possible in my view, but I cannot really claim that, I did as much research with that one, unfortunately. But, I will give my little prediction on that. But of course, for those of you that ended up seeing yesterday, I already gave my analysis on the Devin Haney versus, what's his name? Brian Norman Jr. fight, where I predicted, I believe, Brian Norman Jr. just by, basically a fingernail. I mean, that fight is really so close, it could go either way. If Brian Norman had better feet, then I probably would have definitely picked him to win the fight, at least unanimously. But, because he really does not have the best of feet and he also does not have that great a competition, it's a little bit hard to see who is going to win that fight. Because Devin Haney, excuse me, could possibly, overall just be a better version of what he was in his last fight and still win the fight if Brian Norman is not going to be able to find a way to get in consistently. And overall, if he is not going to be able to hurt that of a Devin Haney. But I'm going to assume that because Devin Haney is moving up a weight class, and I still think that Ryan Garcia fight is a little bit in his head. And I think that Brian has made certain adjustments and is going to try to go balls to the wall, which may surprise Devin Haney a little bit in this fight. I'm going to slightly favor Brian Norman within that fight, but it really is a fight that originally I was kind of going with Devin Haney on, but it's really so close. It's kind of hard to predict because, of course, styles make fights. But anyways, that being stated, of course, the main fight that, of course, is on this card is that of the David Benavidez versus Anthony Yarde fight, which is a very particularly interesting fight because this is a fight that could be losable for both gentlemen. Now, of course, for those of you that basically want to know the secrets about who I am favoring within this fight, I am, of course, favoring that of David Benavidez. I do have to go with him because he is the undefeated fighter. He has shown me that even though maybe he may not be exceptional in every single category in terms of being a tactician or in terms of being a technical fighter, he is great enough in certain categories. And on top of that, overall is, at least competent in every single category, in order to usually win. And Anthony Yarde is someone that is a great athlete and he has some skills, but he has never proven that he can actually beat any of the great fighters. So, I mean, it is what it is. That being stated, does Anthony Yarde have more of a chance to defeat that of a David Benavidez than that of an Artur Beterbiev? In my personal view, yes. Does he also have more of a chance to defeat that of a David Benavidez than what he did that of a Sergey the Crusher Kovalev? Also, in my personal view, yes. Because David Benavidez is not someone that has the same level of power as both of those guys. I do not think overall that he has quite as good as feet as those guys. And on top of that, those guys have been fighting at light heavyweight for a very long time. So we'll see what ends up happening within this fight. What I will personally state is this. I see David Benavidez more than likely winning this fight by either unanimous decision, or by that of a ladder round stoppage. I'm going to say decision, or if a stoppage does happen, maybe a little bit later on, just because David Benavidez has shown that he appears to have a little bit of a problem getting stoppages at the light heavyweight division. He is not the same quote unquote monster there as what he once was. And it's okay, that pretty much was to be expected. But we're going to talk about that as it goes along. And of course, I'm also going to talk a little bit about the Devin Haney versus Brian Norman fight as well, I believe, as the Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez versus, I believe his name, what's his name? That one Argentine dude that he's fighting. And I know that his last name is Martinez, but I think his name is like Fernando Daniel Martinez, the dude who beat Ioka, I believe, on 2 fights, the four-way division Japanese champion. I will be going into that as well. That overall being stated, let's get into it, and let's see overall Showbiz the Adult interview that of David Benavidez. I always like to get into the psychology of these fighters and overall know what they may be possibly thinking and feeling before a fight. But anyways, that being stated, let's get into it. Let's see what Mr. Showbiz the Adult has to state, and I'll be breaking down the fights as I go along.
I've said I was going to beat all these guys, and I did. I want to be that guy to give you guys a fight you want to see.
Dropping Bibble with a jab? Don't. Did that happen? Don't start.
So I'm gonna tell you the truth that happened, and I'm gonna say for this. And if Bivol says I'm a liar, he can come correct me.
What's up, my people? This the Black Gold Sugars. I'm your host, Showbiz Adult, here with the Mexican monster, David Benavidez. How you doing, my brother?
Doing good, brother.
Good to see you, brother. Listen, I'm gonna tell you something. Just looking at you, brother, it looks like you can fight.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like you can't fight. You know, when you see somebody on TV, you know what I mean, you see them throwing their hands, but in person, you're damn intimidating.
That's how you gotta be, bro. You know what I mean? Even you could have a smile on your face, but we could get down at any time of the day. And
I've already stated this. David Benavidez, it's very obvious to me that his mentality is somewhat similar to that of a Mike Tyson and Roberto Duran and certain fighters of that ilk. I don't think that he's quite to the extreme of what they were in terms of mentality, but it's very obvious that he has somewhat, of an impact from his childhood. Because, of course, for those of you that do not know, David Benavidez was known as the quote-unquote pudgy kid and the chubby kid that basically was quote-unquote easy to pick on. And, of course, if you know, around where he's from, I think he's from Phoenix, Arizona, or wherever he may be. But, of course, Phoenix is not always the best of places, overall. And, of course, his brother got involved in a little bit of gangs, I believe, and certain other things. So I'm sure overall that some of their peers or some of their friends used to tease him and overall used to think that he was a punk. And even David Benavidez overall kind of alluded to that at one point in time. And, of course, that created a little bit of a personality within him and a little bit, overall of a complex to where he said, okay, well, I'm going to show you and I'm going to pound you into submission to overall show you that, I'm someone not to be fucked with. And that pretty much always stays with you, once you deal with that basically with childhood. So, I understand David Benavidez. And that's, when you take a look at a lot of other fighters, of course, that have to deal with certain childhood demons or certain things within that of their childhood. Fighting basically gives them, an opportunity to take it out on people within that of the ring, which is why boxing, of course, it's not a sport that, is for that of the faint of heart or someone that is not going to take it seriously, because some of these guys are really, really, really trying to hurt you. So it is what it is. And David Benavidez is one of those guys. He appears to be a very solid dude outside the ring, but inside the ring, he does want to hurt you.
This is how I protect myself, and this is how I keep people from messing with me. But I don't promote violence, but we could do it whenever we want.
You see what David Benavidez just said there? He said, "This is how I keep people from messing with me."
Oh, no. We're going to talk about violence. We're going to talk about violence because violence get people to view, and that's why we love your boxing style. I was just talking to someone earlier, right? And we were in a restaurant having cheeseburgers. And they were asking me about boxing and what boxing needs. And I'm like, it needs a superstar. It needs the new Mike Tyson. The personality, but the product that gets people off their feet to say, I'm going to see something savage that I'm afraid to do, that I'm inspired by and motivated by seeing other people do that stuff that I'm just too lazy and I'm too fearful to do. Can you be that superstar?
Yeah.
Well, let me say this about David Benavidez very quickly. I don't know if David Benavidez is ever going to be looked at as someone, quote-unquote, like a Mike Tyson. And Mike Tyson, in my view, although he was a great fighter, he's also one of the most overrated fighters within that of boxing history. Because he basically never won against any of the super elite talents that he ever fought. But the point overall is that, when you take, or at least any of the true A-grade level fighters that he fought, other than that of Michael Spinks. Anyways, that overall being stated, Mike Tyson was someone that when you took a look at him, even though sure it was against a lot of bums, he was someone that would knock a lot of people out in a very short amount of time. People were taking a look at Mike Tyson and saying like, wow, like we had never seen this before. With David Benavidez, I don't know if anyone really gets, the look at him like we've never seen this before. I think they take a look at him and say, wow, he looks like, that very entertaining Mexican fighter that is willing to fight anybody. I think that of course, people are drawn to David Benavidez to watch his style. He has a very fan-friendly style, but I don't know if he's ever going to be on that superstar level of a quote-unquote Mike Tyson or someone like that. Mike Tyson at one point in time was looked at as, the most popular star on the planet. Not even just within boxing, like he was the most popular athlete in the world. I don't think that David Benavidez is ever going to be on that level. That being stated, I don't think that showbiz, meant it to that degree. and meant it that deep. I think that all he meant was is that do you think that you're going to have, overall a lot of show, time and, overall basically have a lot of show power and a lot of star power. I think that David Benavidez has the opportunity, but I don't think that he's ever going to be someone on the level of, say, an Oscar De La Hoya or a Canelo, for example. Because when you take a look at those guys, their careers were very carefully marketed in the beginning days. On top of that, they also had certain things, including their looks, going for them. Canelo Alvarez overall was a guy that was, quote unquote, not a bad looking guy. And on top of that, he was a quote unquote Caucasian Hispanic. So he attracted a certain amount of the European or Caucasian fans as well as that of the Latino fans. And Oscar De La Hoya was someone that had a very entertaining style as well as a great boxer. He also was someone that, had quote unquote rugged good looks as well. He was known as a very handsome guy. So Oscar De La Hoya was able to attract not only just, a certain amount of maybe the male boxing, but he was also able to attract a lot of female fans as well. Same with that of a Ryan Garcia. That's why Ryan Garcia, a big part of the reason why he's so sellable, because he has the quote unquote look.
Definitely, bro. At the end of the day, like I said, I've showed you guys. I don't like to be that guy that just talk and say I'm gonna do this, say I'm gonna do that. I've said I was gonna beat all these guys, and I did. I want to be that guy to give you guys the fights you want to see. I know I want to be that guy that you guys know for a fact that once David Benavidez gets turned on, there's gonna be a war and everybody's gonna enjoy the fight. So that's exactly what.
And I give David Benavidez a lot of credit overall for basically being willing to fight anybody in the ring. I was wondering how serious he was actually going to be moving up to light heavyweight because you never know overall how serious some of these heavyweights are. Or, excuse me, you never know how serious some of these guys are when they really move up a weight class and they finally fight the big dogs. But he was pretty much willing to get in the ring with them. And it was Dimitri Bivol, who I believe who ended up giving his title for whatever reason, and David Benavidez ended up capturing it. And let me give also a lot of credit to Benavidez because Anthony Yarde and David Morrell, those were, very potentially dangerous fights for not a whole lot of reward. So David Benavidez definitely does deserve a lot of credit. And so far, it appears that he is willing to get in the ring with someone like that of an Artur Beterbiev and a Dimitri Bivol. And of course, he also was able to get in the ring with Caleb Plant, Andrade, and Canelo Alvarez.
That's what I've become. You know what I mean? And that's what I just want to keep being for the fans and, for the younger generation.
And of course, certain people will say, well, David and Canelo never fought. Yes, but David was very willing to get in the ring with Canelo. Anyways.
Show them how monsters are made.
Listen, bro. That just gave me chills. Y'all want to leave? Y'all want to end the interview right now? Listen. You were talking about fighting everyone and giving us the fights. Here's my criticism. You moved from 168 before anyone can criticize the whole weight bully thing. And so that we couldn't even get a chance to say, he's too big for 168. You went and you did that yourself. But here's where the criticism comes in. Fighting at light heavyweight, you're not demolishing people in the fashion that you were doing at 168. But I want to add this and tell me if I'm going wrong here. It shows your skill more at light heavyweight. So I don't really know how to analyze.
Showbiz in this interview is kind of coming across as someone that, may not necessarily have these concerns himself, but is pretty much doing it overall to spice up the interview. But I mean, that's a part of what makes Showbiz very, very good at his job. Once again, I don't find Showbiz to be necessarily a great predictor or anything like that, but he is someone overall that adds a lot of spice to that of boxing. He is someone that is a great, great personality and someone overall that does have pretty good interviewing skills. So you have to give the man a lot of props there. He definitely does add a lot to boxing.
What you've been doing at light heavyweight.
So now, like you said, I got comfortable 168. I was there for 10 years. And I really got comfortable with the weight and I got comfortable with the power. When I went up to 175, find people are as big as me or even bigger. Like you said, you have to use a skill. So I've gone back to my my roots. I've been working on the fundamentals, and that's really how you hurt somebody. I just want to fight the best fighters, like with Anthony Yarde now.
Well, the thing also is with David Benavidez, which is pretty much what I've been saying all along, he's never been someone with this A+ level power. Certain people tried to promote him as this guy that was the Mexican Mike Tyson. That's not really what David Benavidez is. David Benavidez is someone that, of course, is a very skilled fighter. He, of course, has certain holes in his game, but, of course, certain things are, it's like, David Benavidez is a guy that, A, has never really had A+ level power. There's a reason why Caleb Plant was able to survive against him, and there's some other, fighters as well who also were able to survive. He also fought pretty much a washed up Alexander Vosdik, and, he basically was able to not even knock him down once, according to my recollection. And David Benavidez against David Morrell, he also was not able to knock him down, I believe, even on one occasion. So David Benavidez is not someone that has this A+ level power. I do think that he has A- level power, but I do not overall think that he's someone that has ever been this juggernaut for power. And he's someone that, the average fighter, when they finally move up weight classes, you start to see the level of power decrease to a certain degree. Now, in order for the power to be long lasting, even throughout multiple weight classes, either one of two things has to be going on. Either overall, maybe one of three. Maybe overall, they could be packing on the weight very, very well. Or B, they just have that natural solid power that is just absolutely so phenomenal that very few fighters have it, like Javante Tank Davis or Naoya Inoue or certain guys like that. Or number three, of course, they could possibly be on something, a little bit of extra vitamins, of course, for any of you that know what I mean. But there are certain fighters overall that, they just are able to go up the weight classes and for whatever reason, they're able to retain power, possibly gain it. But there are a certain amount of people, of course, who thought Manny Pacquiao was on steroids for that reason because he was destroying a lot of guys, even moving up the weight classes. Of course, we know that Canelo Alvarez was able to retain a lot of his power moving up the weight, and of course, he was caught on steroids. And there's a multitude of other guys that I'm sure that I'm not thinking of. I don't think that Inoue has been caught on steroids, and since he does not work with that of the snack program to my recollection or any program that I find to be suspicious, I'm not going to really allege that about him. Now, excuse me, there are other fighters, of course, overall that either would be in the quote-unquote Eddie Reynoso camp or that work with the snack program, including that of Terrence Bud Crawford, that I would probably have suspicions with. But it is what it is. Anyways.
He looks like a warrior. He goes to war. So when two people go to war, that's exactly what I want. I want to give the people what they want to see. And that's why I picked Anthony Yarde. And like I said, I'm just getting better and better. And I'm getting smarter. I'm getting more experience. And at the end of the day, when you get up to these types of fights, these big crowds, they kind of do something to you. Sometimes you might just want to go in there looking for a knockout when you can't do that. You got to analyze a fighter. You got to break them down. And that's what experience comes from. Not getting too overexcited, but just going in there, doing the basics, and getting the job done.
But there's beauty.
Definitely. And I don't think that David Benavidez is going to take Anthony Yarde lightly. I think he realizes that Anthony Yarde is someone that is very particularly dangerous. Now, Anthony Yarde, in my view, has been a bit overrated, overall within that of boxing circles. There's always that one fighter that can't ever win the big fights, but everyone says that he has this massively underrated skill set when, in all reality, their skill set is good, but it's not great. Anthony Yarde is someone, of course, that you don't want to fight, overall, unless you absolutely have to, because he's dangerous and he has a lot of power. I think that he has a great puncher's chance over David Benavidez, and I do think that he probably could be more challenging than that of a David Morrell, because I think that there's parts of him that makes him more skilled than that of a David Morrell, at least in certain things. But I just don't see him winning this fight. Anthony Yarde has never proven that he can last a full 12 against the elite of the elite, and he's never really proven overall that he is so astronomically skilled. He has a good foundation of skills, but it's not great. Now, could that be enough to beat David Benavidez? It's possible, but in my personal view, no. David Benavidez, in my view, although he has shown, not as good a stamina at this weight class, which you kind of expect, but it's even a little bit more than what I thought it was going to be. And then on top of that, Benavidez, in my view, is just going to throw too much too consistently. Now, he does need to be careful in this fight not to square up too often, because David Benavidez likes to come forward, exchange within that 50-50 range, get little certain exchanges, and then kind of go within that high guard and then square up a little bit, wait for his opponents to kind of throw. That way, overall, he can, kind of return back. Now, excuse me, David Benavidez has also gotten a lot better at moving out of the range. Now, does it look like poetry when he does it? Does he look like Floyd Mayweather or, a Canelo Alvarez with upper body movement or anything? No. But he's someone overall, that has good enough feet and good enough upper body movement, at least has improved it to the point to where it's effective enough.
The way you fight still, I've said this to the war room many times. When people ask me the top most skillful fighters, I add you all the time. There are things that you're doing in that ring that people aren't really noticing. Defensively, slickness, Lights Out James Toney said you're one of the most skillful fighters in the world. And now
David Benavidez is a lot more skilled overall than what certain people give him credit for. That being stated, is he someone that I would claim is one of the top 10 most skilled fighters on the planet? No, not necessarily. Would I claim that he's as skilled as, say, someone like a Crawford? No. Would I say he's as skilled as someone like a Usyk? No. Definitely not those guys. Would I claim that he's as skilled as an Inoue? No. Would I claim that he's as skilled, as a Shakur Stevenson? No. Would I claim that he's as skilled overall probably as some other guys, even like a Dimitri Bivol? No, probably not. But that being stated, he is someone that, with his skill set could maybe debatably be within that top 20 pound per pound. Especially with what he's been able to do in terms of certain adjustments. Sometimes overall, even though it doesn't look pretty, the results are really all that matter. David Benavidez is kind of similar to those of you that know Dricus du Plessis for the UFC. He's kind of similar to him. There are certain things that he does that are a little bit unorthodox, and it doesn't always look pretty, but he is effective enough to the point to where he can beat a lot of certain fighters, even at certain times at their own game, because he's a little bit better in that category than what you may think.
Anthony Yarde, somebody who's fought Beterbiev, Kovalev, this guy's going to fight you. I mean, there must be a ton of respect, not just for his skill level.
Let me also state this about Anthony Yarde, because there's been this narrative overall that Anthony Yarde gave Sergey the Crusher Kovalev this life and death fight. He did not. And then, of course, everyone says, well, Anthony Yarde really gave Artur Beterbiev the toughest fight before Bivol and all this other bullshit. No, he really didn't. Anthony Yarde was, someone that, gave Beterbiev a tough round, maybe two. But other than that, Anthony Yarde, he pretty much got dominated throughout the whole entire fight. And against Sergey the Crusher Kovalev, he also got thoroughly embarrassed, pretty much lost every round, other than that one round where he hurt Sergey the Crusher Kovalev very badly. And every judge had Kovalev, and an older Kovalev, by the way, who was already knocked out by Andre Ward, who was stopped by Andre Ward, I believe at that time, and also stopped by Eleider Alvarez, and Kovalev ended up beating the shit out of him. Now, of course, certain people will say, well, how come you never said that with Canelo? Because Canelo's not a natural light heavyweight. Canelo is someone that really is a 160-pounder that really never should have been fighting there in the first place. But Anthony Yarde is a 175-pounder.
But the way that he turns down nothing but his collar. Let's talk about you taking on him, and what do you expect from him bring to you November 22nd?
So I'm expecting him to be the best Anthony Yarde anybody's ever seen, because this is his third attempt at a world title. This might be his last.
And that is a very, very smart way to look at it. That's the way that you have to look at it if you are a quote-unquote champion or someone overall that is looked at as a top-level athlete. You always have to expect the best version of your opponents, especially when they're at their most desperate. Anthony Yarde, if he ends up losing this fight, he pretty much, I'm not going to say that he's never going to get another title shot again, but he's going to be looked at, basically as, where before people will say, well, Anthony Yarde, maybe he can do it. People are pretty much going to give up on him completely if he ends up losing a third time.
Attempt. I feel like he has his back against the wall, and now he's going to come with everything. But like I said, if he wants to go to war, I'm going to be ready to go to war with him. That's exactly what I want. When I fight the best fighter out there possible, it motivates me more, and it makes me even hungrier to reach another height of greatness. So that's why I like going against these top-level fighters, these good fighters, because they bring the best out of me. So I know he's going to be hungry. He's going to be coming out looking to put on a show. He wants to get that title. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to let that happen.
Dude, that's old school. I just came up with something new. All right, I was on the plane coming here. I was thinking about...
Well, people always say this is a quote-unquote old school. This is, kind of showbiz, kind of, relating to his quote-unquote old school fan base and all sort of shit. But the truth is that ducking and boxing has been going on for fucking years. So, I mean, it just is what it is. Sugar Ray Leonard got accused of it. Muhammad Ali got accused of it. A multitude of other people got accused of it. I mean, it is what it is. It's been going on for the whole entire fucking time. But the thing overall is that what I will personally state is that anyone who is massively competitive and always seeks out to improve themselves, they're always, at times at least, going to be looking for the best, because that, of course, is how you improve yourself. So I definitely respect that of a David Benavidez' mentality, because any of us, of course, that like to get better at a certain thing, you're only going to get better if you face adversity.
Fighters today with the old school mentality, right? So you have the Silver Age Okay, and then you have the golden age of boxing. And that was like back when, Ezra Charles and Rocky Marciano and all those things. And I'm saying today, I have an age for you guys. This is the era you guys are in.
Heat. Indoor plumbing.
Stone Age. I think you guys are bringing it back to its origin.
Yeah.
The way you're taking on everybody. And you keep saying, I want to fight the best so you guys can see the best out of me. So you guys can see the best out of me, doing it for the fans and knowing how important that is.
Yeah.
Can you speak on that, on who you fight for and why?
First, I fight for God. Second, I fight for my family. Third, I fight for myself. And then the fourth reason I fight is I fight for the younger generation coming up. I want to show the kids that you guys can't always just worry about being undefeated and just picking the easiest fights out of everything. You're robbing yourself out of greatness. So when you go...
Well, we'll see if that's true, Mr. David Benavidez. I will give you a lot of props. I will say that so far, the stuff that you do say, it appears that you are about, because you have appeared overall to be wanting to fight that of everybody, but we'll see. Because I've seen this narrative, a whole bunch of times from a whole bunch of boxers about it doesn't matter, and I'm here to fight the best and blah blah blah. And then a certain wrong style type of matchup comes up and they don't want to fight that guy. So I mean, we'll see what ends up happening. David Benavidez is going to be very interesting because he's a very interesting character, and I don't really know how long he's going to last. Because to be quite honest with you, just my view, especially what I've seen in his tenure at light heavyweight, unless he possibly gets on some special juice, I just don't overall know how much longer he's going to last against guys like Better Beef and that of Bivol. And, to be quite honest with you, I don't know if I see him beating either of those fighters. It's possible, especially because they're getting older in age, but I think that both of those fighters bring more to the table than him. But, I mean, we'll see what ends up happening there. And, of course, then there's, the next jump up at cruiserweight. And if you have a guy like Jai Opatai or whatever his name is, that one, New Zealander or Australian boy, I don't think that I would see David Benavidez beating him either. But we'll see.
This is what you have to do. You have to go against people that you might not know that you're going to win. But you always have that mentality like you're going to win. You have to go into fights to be like, man, it's 50-50, but I'm going in there, I'm going to take that. Once you do that, you do what you say you're going to do, you achieve another level of greatness. And, that's a lot of things fighters are missing today. They don't want to take.
I agree with you, Mr. David Benavidez. That's a lot of the times how you get better. And on top of that, how you improve your adversity and just improve everything, basically, in terms of handling adversity and becoming more skilled. Is that when you get in certain challenging situations, you know that it's something that you could lose, but you always have the mentality knowing that you can win.
A chance. Because it's a 50-50. Once you go up against a person as good as you, has more skills than you, it's 50-50. But that's the beauty of it. That's when you beat somebody and you become great. You can't buy that. You could dream of that. It's hard to get that, but it can be done. But you have to challenge yourself. Sometimes these challenges...
Agreed 100%, sir.
...are scary. But now I know for a fact that every time I went up against somebody that I thought had as much experience or skill as me, and I went in and I beat them, that's what makes me more as confident as I am today. That's why I know I'm going to be great, and I'm not going to stop until I achieve that.
You haven't found that limit yet.
I haven't found that.
I think that you are a relatively great fighter, sir, but I also am wondering what your limit is really going to be. Because I think that once David Benavidez gets in the ring with someone like a Better Beef and a Bivol, that he might be somewhat surprised at what he sees from them in the ring. I think David Benavidez has a great mindset, and I have a very similar mindset in certain competitive things as well. There are certain 50-50, things overall, of course, and it's like, you get in there and you just want to see overall, it's losable, but, of course, you always believe that you can win. I love that mentality because, of course, I've had a very similar mentality in certain competitive things as well, so I understand what he's talking about there. Now, of course, am I talking about being a professional boxer or anything like that? No. But the point overall is that, I understand where David Benavidez is coming from, but that intelligence is also going to have to come with it. So we'll see. And David seems to be a relatively intelligent dude. He seems to be a very intelligent guy. He also appears to be a very intelligent fighter, although he may not do necessarily everything by exact textbook technical skills. But David Benavidez is someone that is very skilled. He's someone that is an A-grade level fighter. I just don't know if he's ever going to be in that top 5 pound-for-pound discussion. But I hope for him, he at least gets a chance to be there.
So then also, too, I know I'm meant for this because since I
And the fighters that he did fight, like Caleb Plant and Demetrius Andrade, that were really good, and of course David Morrell. I mean, and I'm not trying to shit all over that of David Benavidez's parade, but all those guys, in my personal view, were about A-minus level fighters. Caleb Plant is someone that was already knocked out by Canelo Alvarez, and we've seen a lot of the holes within his game in that fight. He does not have great stamina. He is not the most defensively responsible. He lets them push him up against ropes a little bit too much, and overall lets his opponents get off on him a little bit too much within that of the inside range. That's always been a problem with him, as well as admiring his work. Andrade is someone that really was one of the most overrated fighters that I've probably ever seen. And don't get it twisted, Andrade is, someone that's a relatively great talent. But people were acting like Demetrius Andrade was like the best fucking fighter from 154 to 168. I mean, for literally beating nobody. And then on top of that, like Andrade, it's not like he was ever in there looking like Floyd Mayweather. Like he was struggling against guys like Liam Williams and Jack fucking Colkay. Like, give me a break. And, so I was not, I was a little bit surprised that Andrade got knocked out as early against Benavidez as what he did. But, I mean, and to be fair, it was somewhat of a new weight class and he was a bit older. But he basically had no wear and tear on him because he'd been fighting bums for his whole entire career. So, I mean, the thing is that, that's who he ended up beating. And, of course, great on him. But still, the real challenges for David Benavidez are going to come with Better Beef and Bivol and some of those guys. And David Morrell is someone that was very massively overrated in my view, at least in terms of his skill set. He's dangerous, but his skill set is very, very massively overrated. People thought that heading into that fight, just because he was a Cuban fighter with a great amateur program, that he was this quote-unquote slickster, and anyone that watches David Morrell knows that he's not that. So, I mean, we'll see what ends up happening. But David Benavidez, he has passed his tests, but I want to see him against a true top 10 level pound-for-pound test, and that's when I'll know how great he truly is.
a little kid, I've been sparring at the high level. I started sparring Golovkin when I was 15 years old. I was his main sparring partner from 16 all the way to 19 years old.
Shit.
Me, I sparred him, Zurdo Ramirez. When Zurdo Ramirez just became world champion at 168. I sparred Kelly Pavlik when I was 15.
Zurdo Ramirez, God, people are going to take a look at this goddamn video and be like, goddamn, like, what's with you today, boxing real? I don't mean to be so negative within this video. Zurdo Ramirez has probably one of the most padded records that I've ever fucking seen in my life. Like, no offense, but the way that you got your ass kicked against Dimitri Bivol in that fight, like, who the fuck is the best fighter that he's ever fought? Like, Arthur Abraham? Like, Jesus Christ.
15. I sparred Bivol countless of times from 19 to 22. I sparred all of them. And I've got the better of every single one of these fights.
Wait a second, I gotta stop you there.
Well, you say that you got the better of every single one of those fighters, and, I'm sure that to a degree that you did, David. I think that you're somewhat telling the truth. But fighting is different from that of a sparring session. But I don't mind David Benavidez stating that because he's just confident overall, and I think that David Benavidez is coming from, overall a somewhat of a purely honest place. I don't think that he's coming from a quote-unquote, I'm trying to get one up on you. I just think that that's what he truly believes. Now, of course, there's certain things that people overall end up saying that they truly believe that, of course, is clearly demented or, clearly delusional. But I think that David Benavidez, I think that he's coming from a somewhat truthful place. I think that he truly believes that he somewhat got the better of Dimitri Bivol. Do I believe, of course, that a fight is completely different from sparring? Yes, I do. But like I said, I understand where he's coming from. But like I said, Mr. David Benavidez, we're going to see once again how great you actually are when you finally get in a professional boxing bout against one of those guys.
Dropping Bibble with a jab? Don't. Did that happen? Don't start.
So I'm gonna tell you the truth. That happened. Nobody got dropped with the jab, but what happened? Me and Bivol, we had a lot of great sparring sessions. This was the last sparring session we had, and I'm gonna say for this. And if Bivol says I'm a liar, he can come correct me.
I was the first one to ever join the military in my family.
In the last round, we did 4 rounds. I'd caught him on the ropes, and I let a combination go. I let like a 20-piece combination go. Until the round ended, when I walked away, his legs wobbled, and he went back to his corner and said, "We don't want no more." And I'm not gonna say it was easy, because that dude is super good.
What?
But that just shows you what level I'm at. And what was that gym called that we sparred at? Bob, what was that gym called? Churchill. If anybody says I'm a liar, they could go get the footage from Churchill boxing that we did that. I don't gotta lie for nobody, especially in boxing.
You got the receipts. I have one last question. Can I do one last question? I have to bring up the elephant in the room, but I'm going to do it my way. All right, the showbiz the adult way. Am I wrong for stating that I don't need to see you versus Canelo Alvarez? If he doesn't,
I don't think that the world really at this point needs to see David Benavidez versus Canelo. Because, I mean, I know that there's a lot of people overall saying that Canelo needs to carry the torch and all our shit, over to David Benavidez. But, I mean, at this point in time, is a fight really going to be that competitive? Canelo Alvarez, I mean, it's very clear within that of his last few fights that he's been on his last legs for a while. And against Terrence Bud Crawford, although he still did look like a great fighter, he does not look like a fighter that needs to be fighting a fucking light heavyweight for his frame. I mean, come on.
want to fight you, I don't want to see the fight. I want to see two fighters who want to be in there.
Yeah.
So if he doesn't want to, I'm losing my steam.
To be honest, I lost.
Well, that fight basically has already been dead now for about a year. Especially now that Canelo Alvarez just lost to Terrence Bud Crawford. There's no fucking reason for that fight. The only fight overall that really would make sense right now would be a rematch. There would be no reason. I mean, what? Canelo Alvarez just lost to a fighter that, overall moved up like, what, two different weight classes? Now, of course, that being stated overall, of course, Terrence Bud Crawford, he's someone that, is highly skilled, and debatably the most skilled fighter on the planet. But, I mean, the point overall is that, what, Canelo Alvarez just lost to Terrence Bud Crawford, a guy moving up 2 weight classes, and people think that he's going to beat a legit 175-pounder that's like, what, 6'2"? Like, it's not happening.
My steam too. The only people that are gonna miss out on that, see why of that fight is the fans. The boxing is gonna miss a great part of boxing just because somebody doesn't want to give me the fight. If they don't want to give me the fight, that's fine. I'm already looking at other things. I'm thinking about other fighters. I don't care if I ever fight Canelo, but there was possibly one of the greatest fights in boxing left on the table for no reason.
Yeah.
Yes, and unfortunately that happens a lot within boxing. It just is what it is. There are just certain matchups or there are just certain times in sports where you expected certain things to happen or, we wanted that matchup to happen and of course it just never came to fruition. Like for a lot of people overall that may not remember for basketball, of course, and I bring up basketball because this is one of the few examples in sports where a lot of people see this as a majorly missed opportunity. But everyone wanted to see LeBron James versus Kobe Bryant, I believe it was, within that of the 2009 or 2010 finals. Yeah, I think it was within 2010 finals. And LeBron James, I believe, ended up losing to that, of the Orlando. I think it was 2009, actually, now that I think about it. But he ended up losing to that of the Orlando Magic, I think, within that of like 5 games. So, I mean, of course, then we've seen Orlando Magic versus that of the LA Lakers, which, of course, pretty much was, a great team versus a decently good team, but someone that I wouldn't really call an all-time great team. I mean, it is what it is. But anyway.
If he says he's so good like he is, and come beat me, come show me up, come show the whole world. Just like how I'm showing the world that I'm the best.
Yeah.
But that's why he doesn't believe in himself. That's why he doesn't want to fight me, because he doesn't believe in himself.
You don't look easy, brother. You building that.
I'm not easy.
That's the Black Two Sugar. Man, thank you so much, brother. For sure.
But anyways, that pretty much is about it for Mr. David Benavidez versus Anthony Yarde. As for my other fight predictions, who do I believe is going to win? Well, once again, I'm going with David Benavidez by that of unanimous decision. I do think that Anthony Yarde will more than likely be able to survive for a while. I could be wrong about that. But David Benavidez has just not shown me that he has this phenomenal power at 175. To be honest with you, I never really thought that he had this phenomenal power at 168. But it is what it is. But we'll see. And he does need to be very careful that he is defensively responsible because Anthony Yarde does have legit one-shot knockout power. So we'll see what ends up happening. As for the next fight, I think that Devin Haney versus Brian Norman Jr., I am very tentatively going with that of Brian Norman because I've seen some slight improvements from him. Now, I don't think that he's still going to have the best defeat within the fight, but I still think he's going to be able to hit Devin Haney at certain times and possibly pressure him and confuse him. And I'm still just wondering how Devin Haney is going to perform after that Ryan Garcia performance in his last fight against Jose Ramirez. He was able to do very well, but that also was a Jose Ramirez that A, was not really the same fighter anymore, and B, really is the wrong type of style to beat a style like that anyway. Just way too patient. Now, Brian Norman Jr., of course, does not have the best defeat, but I do think that he will try to make the fight very, very ugly. Now, he is not the best against that type of style, but I do think that he may just have a chance to beat Devin Haney, so I'm going very slightly with him. I think overall that he will throw a lot, and I do believe that he will try to make the fight ugly by whatever means necessary. So I'm going to go with him, to a slight degree. And he seems like he wanted to make improvements, so I will go with him. Now, if I thought that Devin Haney was coming in at full steam, if this was the Devin Haney over Regis Prograis, then I'd pick him to win the fight probably. But, Brian Norman Jr., I'm going slightly with him. As for Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez versus that of a Martinez, I'm going with Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez. He has a 3-inch reach advantage. He's also way too maneuverable, and I think has too many dimensions to his game. Martinez is very good, but he's someone, in my view, that can kind of get caught a little bit too much in that brawling style, get close within the range, kind of try to lean down and block certain shots, But Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez is not going to fall within those traps. He's not going to stay within the range. He's going to be someone overall that moves in and out. He has very good feet. He's also someone that knows how to use of lateral movement and angles. And I think that is going to trouble that of a Martinez. And I do think eventually that Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez will be able to knock him out, I'll say within that of 10 rounds. So we'll see what ends up happening. I just think that he's going to be too maneuverable, too good of a lead hand, a little bit too lengthy, and someone that just has too many dimensions to his game for a fighter that just stays in the pocket a little bit too long against a fighter that really likes to fight that type of style, just in my personal view. But we'll see overall what ends up happening. As for that of an Abdullah Mason versus that of a Sam Noakes, I believe his name is, a lot of people are claiming that fight is close. I mean, we'll see what ends up happening, but in my personal view, Abdullah Mason is clearly the more talented fighter. I don't think that he's someone that is an A+ level fighter, but he's someone that is very fast, very strong. He also has a certain amount of movement. He does seem to have a problem with what I've seen with not moving his head out of the range or not keeping his hands back up after he throws. So Noakes could possibly take advantage of that, but Noakes also is nowhere near as physically talented as him. And on top of that, Noakes is someone that has almost no head movement whatsoever. I mean, when I took a look at him overall, at least within the footage that I ended up seeing, he does not move his head off the center line whatsoever. And I think that he's just way too slow. I think in order for him to be successful, he's either going to have to push him up against the ropes or keep him within the range. And I don't know if he's going to be able to do that over a quicker-footed fighter, and a fighter, in my personal view, that also has a lot of power and speed. Yes, some of his disadvantages could cause him to get caught, but I think that the disadvantages that Noakes has are going to be a little bit more obvious within that of the fight than that of Abdullah Mason's. But we'll see. So I'm going to predict that of Abdullah Mason either by knockout or by that of unanimous decision. I predict David Benavidez by that of unanimous decision. I predict that of a Brian Norman either by majority decision or that of unanimous decision. And I also predict that of Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez by, latter round stoppage. So we'll see. But those are my 5 predictions. I'm going with Brian Norman Jr. I'm going with Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez. I'm going with Abdullah Mason. And I'm going with David Benavidez. So hopefully I can get 4 for 4. But we'll see what ends up happening. But anyways, that pretty much is about it today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to y'all later. I'll stream this fight if I can, at least talking with my commentary, but we'll see. That being said, that's about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to y'all later.